In this episode of the How to Do Your 20s podcast, I have Tony Hale on. We're going to be talking about self-testing for improving your health and improving your success, an idea that is extremely interesting to me, something that I do in my own way, but I'm very interested to hear how Tony recommends that we do the self-testing. So first off, Tony, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I just made that up. I thought maybe you could tell me stuff about it. I just thought it sounded cool too.
You know, I probably have a few things, but I'm assuming you have a lot more.
So I've heard a couple of your shows where you talked about some stuff. So we'll dig into some things. It'll be fun and exciting.
I like it. So first off, what got you into this? Like, how did you get involved in self-testing for health and success?
Well, just like every natural health expert out there, I started my career in stand-up comedy.
Okay.
That's really what it was. Yeah, that's probably not really how most of them start, but I worked as a touring comic for about 10 years. And one weekend, it was a Valentine's Day weekend, I think, I lost my voice and it never came back. So I spent the next 8 years trying to figure it out. And, the first year was all doctors and medications, and every single doctor and every drug was making me feel worse and worse. And by the time they were done with me, and I was an in shape guy, I was working as a personal trainer. I understood nutrition and health, all these things. I'd been studying them for years. But by the time the doctors were done with me, I had 3 steps up to the apartment that I was living in at the time. I had to stop and rest halfway up those steps. I was brutal. After every personal training client, I went home and I had to take a nap. So I kind of embarked on this, screw everybody else. I'm going to figure this out myself. And that's kind of what I did. And I started traveling the country, going to every nutrition workshop and seminar that I could find. And eventually not only found my answers, but as I was digging for my stuff, I kept finding things that, my friend Mike is dealing with that. Maybe I can help him not have to sit on the toilet 15 times a day, and that's kind of how it all developed.
So what was wrong with your voice? What happened, and how did you fix it?
It ended up that my shoes were on too tight.
Okay.
No, it was a number of things. I had a lot of things going on. I had an iron overload issue. That's kind of a hereditary genetic thing that happens for a lot of Irish and Scottish people. And that was causing a lot of inflammation. And I had a hiatal hernia that was creating some reflux issues, and acid was coming back up and kind of burning my cords so that they couldn't recover properly.
Wow. So as far as the listeners, and actually I'm very curious for my own self-interest, how can we start improving our performance, our energy levels as soon as possible? What kind of tests can we run, and what can we learn from those tests?
Yeah, it's probably more complicated than we could really cover here, but we could really explain some things to where a listener can be like, oh yeah, I could totally do that. That's not hard. And we teach how to do all of these things in all of our books, and we have online courses. I'll have you put up a link because we have this online course at our website, kickitnaturally.com. And we set it up as a free course for all of our book readers because some of the things we get into are a little complicated. So we wanted to make these videos to where, some people take in information better reading. Some people do better when they see a video. So we made all these videos showing how to do all of these tests that you can do at home. And we walk people through it. And it's basically a free course, but you got to pay 50 cents to sign up because I need 50 cents. No, we just put that up to kind of keep all the spam registrations out. So that way you prove you're a real person by putting a credit card in. But they can take that course and it'll go into more depth about a lot of the things that we'll talk about here today. If anybody gets lost or what the hell is he talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you can pick up things at a pharmacy or a health food store that can give you a lot of insights into how your body is operating, because the reality is that we don't all operate the same way. There is no diet that will work for every person because we all process foods differently. And I'm sure you've seen where you went on some kind of diet or changed your nutrition in some way and it did great things for you, and then your friend did it and they gained 30 pounds or threw up 6 times or something like that. We hear about that stuff all the time. Have you ever had that happen with you?
Yeah, I'm definitely. Diets that work for me, do not work for other people. I've definitely seen that.
Yeah, and it's basically because we're all processing foods differently. Like I may process fats better than you. You may process carbs better than me, and maybe you can't digest protein at all. So there's a lot of variation in just those equations right there. So what we do is we help people look at their own physiology and figure out, how are they operating? What kind of foods can they lean towards to feel better, perform better, function better, lose weight better, do anything of that better right away? And then what problems can they fix to allow them to broaden what they're eating and to still function at a higher level? So, maybe if you're processing fats and proteins better than carbs, you could lean more towards a low carb type diet and function and feel a whole lot better. But then you could also take steps to maybe improve the performance of your insulin so that you can process carbs better. It kind of opens you up to, okay, I don't have to eat these 6 things. I can eat more stuff.
Hmm. Okay. Gotcha. So I guess listening to this right now. So if I were to, what would be the first step for me if I wanted to start increasing my performance?
Well, the first thing that I like to see somebody look at, the most important thing is their blood pressure. Um, Most people, when they hear about blood pressure, they're like, "Oh, my doctor checked it. I don't have a high blood pressure. I don't need to look at that." But there's a lot more information in your blood pressure than just if you're about to die from a heart attack. There's a lot of insights that you can gain just from looking at your blood pressure. And what we see a lot is that with a lot of the issues that we see frequently with people that are dealing with, a lot of them are caused by low blood pressure. And the problem in the mainstream medical community is that your doctor is never going to tell you that your blood pressure is too low because it's not in his training. There is no low blood pressure medication, so they're not taught that low blood pressure can cause a lot of problems and make people very miserable. So they just kind of focus on the high blood pressure stuff. So people go and their doctor sees that their blood pressure is 95 over 50. And they say that's great because they know that that person's not going to have a blowout. They're not going to have a
Hmm.
heart attack and die. So they say good job and send them on their way. But if you're having some of the problems that commonly show up with people with low blood pressure, and you look at your blood pressure and see that it's low, then you're like, oh, maybe I'm not a carbaholic or a chocolate freak, or I'm depressed for no reason. You know, there's things that go on very frequently with low blood pressure, and if a person sees that their numbers match up with the issues that people are dealing with, they're very commonly with low blood pressure. Now they have an answer. Now they have a direction that they can go, and they can say, okay, now I can make steps to see what's going on. Why is my blood pressure low, and what can I do to raise it so that I can function correctly? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So how, if you did find out you had low blood pressure, how do you fix that?
Well, there's a lot of things that can cause low blood pressure, and with everything that we talk, this is the trick of it,
Mm.
is that with pretty much every symptom, there's more than one underlying cause. So let's pick an example. Let's talk about insomnia, for
Hmm.
example. Um, Insomnia can be caused by low blood pressure because low blood pressure is an indication that your minerals, nutrients, and resources are low. So when we look at our blood pressure, it kind of tells us about the mineral load, a little bit about sugar, protein, and just what's floating around in the blood, what's making it thick or thin. Is the body able to get rid of junk, or is there just a bunch of junk in the blood pressure that's making that blood pressure high? So as we start to look at those things, um, one possible cause of insomnia is to have low blood pressure, low minerals. So the body's kind of waking the person up, saying, "Hey, we're running out of stuff. You need to go whack a zebra on the head, so we can eat." So that's one possible cause of insomnia. But there's a totally different cause for insomnia. There's two or three actually, but the most common one is an issue at the cellular level where a person is in that awake, create energy, and break down tissue state that we're supposed to be in during the day. They're like that at night. So we switch from this catabolic state during the day to an anabolic state at night at the cellular level. And you've probably heard anabolic used a lot because uh, you're fit and dreamy kind of guy, right?
Yeah,
You
sure.
work out, you
Yeah,
lift,
yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So you've heard anabolic, but what that is it's just the rebuilding and repairing state that we're all supposed to move into at night. So a lot of guys will take the anabolic steroids to be in that rebuilding, repairing state all the time, so that they can have no neck. But if that's not the case for you, so a lot of people will not have the ability to move in this anabolic state at night. Some people get stuck in a catabolic state all the time, and that affects their sleep. So the steps that you would take to improve insomnia could be totally different if you're suffering from a catabolic imbalance or if you're having a low blood pressure issue that's contributing to that insomnia. So that's why the self testing is so important, because you can look at your own physiology, and instead of Googling insomnia remedies online and trying 47 different things and half of them make it to where you don't sleep for 3 days, you can look at your physiology and get an idea what's going wrong. And that gives you the steps to take. That starts to guide you towards, okay, I need to fix this catabolic imbalance, or okay, I want to raise my blood pressure. So then when we look at raising blood pressure, you got to look at a variety of things. And most commonly, it's an issue with digestion. Most commonly, it's an inability to break the food that we're eating down to the point where you can pull all the minerals and nutrients out of it. Most people think, well, I ate this sandwich today and then I pooped, the next day, so everything's working great. But the reality is that at least 60% of the people that I see as clients are having digestive issues.
Wow.
So it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Wow. And so there's so many different rabbit holes I want to go down, but I want to back up actually for a second, because it's interesting you talk about the insomnia and specifically not being able to shift into an anabolic state. And I think, or yeah, in an anabolic state, to be honest, it's kind of perfect timing, because that's been happening to me recently where I'm awake at night and it's like, I'm awake and it's not like a big, and
Right.
even right now talking, like I'm awake, but I'm definitely like, oh man, I wish I would have got more sleep. But I feel this buzz of energy at the same time. I'm a little bit slower. I can feel that, like, man, I should have got more sleep. I would have been a little bit sharper. So what do you do when you find, so that, it's great to find out, okay, this is a real problem and it's not just as simple as all insomnia is the same. What's the next step after that, I guess?
Right, and I was an insomniac, hardcore, major insomniac, um, back around when had lost my voice and everything, and it's a nightmare. Like it messes up everything in your world when you really can't sleep for real. Like, not getting great sleep, you can still function, but if you're a guy that you're just sitting there staring at the ceiling for 4 hours, it wrecks your world. And when I fixed it, I can still remember now, just like it was yesterday. I remember waking up and it was light outside, and I'm like, "What the hell happened?" I don't even. And it's like Christmas morning. Every morning when you wake up and you're like, "Holy mackerel! I slept. It worked. That was amazeballs." So it's it's a real mess when you can't sleep. So the first thing that you got to do is you got to look at your blood pressure, like we talked about. That's one thing. But another thing we teach people how to do is we teach them how to look at their urine and saliva pH. But I want you to calm down for a second before I jump too much into this, because there's a lot of people out there who are talking about pH and they're saying that you got to alkalize or you're going to die. And I believed the same thing for probably about a year, right when I lost my voice. That's one of the first rabbit holes I went down. But the reality is that there are people out there whose bloodstream is leaning to acidic, and by moving that bloodstream more alkaline, they will balance the system and a lot of problems will miraculously improve. However, there's just as many people that have a bloodstream that is too alkaline. So when they go to alkalize, they're just going to make themselves a whole lot worse and create a lot of problems with oxygen getting down to the tissues where it needs to be, and energy production, and a lot of stuff. So when I say checking pHs, there's a lot of information that you can get from looking at your urine and saliva pH. I just don't want you to think that I'm saying you need your urine and saliva pH to be alkaline, like a lot of other people out there are kind of going off about.
So is there a pH for, like, let's say my urine and saliva that is, it should be at, I don't know, 9.5, and that's the same for everyone, or does it depend a little bit on from person to person?
It does depend on some things, and actually, there's another test that we teach people to do. We teach them to look at the rate at which they breathe,
Mm.
because the rate at which you breathe gives you a true indication of the pH of your blood, where the pH of your saliva and the pH of your urine have no correlation with your blood whatsoever. And a lot of people teach that whatever your urine and saliva pH is, that's telling you what your blood is, and that's 100% false. But so when you look at your breath rate, the optimal zones for urine and pH can alter a little bit according to your breath rate. But what we look at these pHs for is the main thing we want to see is it gives us an indication of, is that person leaning way too anabolic or way too catabolic? Uh, and that's how you kind of get that. In our almost free 4-week digestion course is what it's called at kickitnaturally.com. We teach how to run the test and then look at all your numbers and make sense of them. Because just talking about it, it's kind of like going to your doctor and your doctor tells you all these things and you leave the office and you're like, what? He said something about a pamphlet? I don't know. So this stuff can be confusing. So in the course, we kind of break it down and we walk you through, all right, looking at this, check off these boxes. And this can give you kind of a snapshot of, are you leaning one way or the other? Is this an area that can cause problems? So what I don't want someone to do is to hear, I have insomnia, I must not be going anabolic, because the reality is that a severe anabolic imbalance can also cause insomnia by causing hard sugar crashes. And then you're back to those low resources at night and the body's waking you up to go find resources. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where it kind of comes back to, is because people ask me, I have a podcast too. It's called Kick It Naturally, just like the website. And every website or every episode, we go over topics like depression and anxiety and high cholesterol and acne. And we kind of talk about, the most common underlying causes. But the most important thing for a person to understand is that you got to look at your physiology before you just start assuming that you have an issue just because you're experiencing the symptom from that issue. It's the biggest mistake that the medical world makes, is they pigeonhole people into these symptoms and then prescribe drugs according to the symptoms. So they're treating the person's symptom instead of looking at the actual individual.
So what fixed your insomnia for you? And obviously it's going to be different for different people, but for you specifically.
Right. And I had two underlying causes. I had low resources and my blood pressure was in the dirt. It was like 90, over 60 or something. And people see that and they're like, oh, it's great. I must be fit, But the reality is that that's a subhuman blood pressure and you are not performing optimally. You could be feeling much, much better by taking steps to raise that. And, some of the steps are as simple as using sea salt. We hear that sea salt's bad from our Uncle Jim that has high blood pressure, and we all run from it. But sea salt is a vital nutrient that can be very beneficial to us. It not only can provide us the chloride ion that we need to produce HCl in our stomachs so that we can actually break down the food that we're eating, but it has all these other minerals and stuff in it. So it can provide your body minerals that your body needs in order to break down food properly so that you can pull minerals out of your food. So you can see how a person with low resources could get stuck in this vicious cycle of not having enough minerals to break down their food properly and not having the ability to pull minerals out of the food they're eating because they can't break it down properly. So for my insomnia, I don't want to skip that question. I had a combination of, I was way overly catabolic and I had low resources. So insomnia is not always going to fit into one little pigeonhole. I had a number of issues that were creating it. So I had to work on improving both of those imbalances. And then I got to wake up like it was Christmas.
And by improving, helping to fix those imbalances? Was that a diet thing? Or was there more to it than just that?
I had to use some supplements, and in initially it seemed like I had to use a lot. Like
Mm.
it seemed like I was full on supplements before I started to eat. I don't know if you've ever done a regimen like that before, but that seemed to be the case for me. And it was because I had a lot of digestive issues, and I had to improve digestion in order to for anything else that I wanted to take to have any impact. If you can't digest your food correctly, a lot of minerals, even if you take supplemental minerals, can't benefit you because you need digestion action going to assimilate a lot of minerals. So I had a lot of things that I had to fix, and I was really falling apart. But it didn't happen overnight, but it started to gradually be like, ooh, I slept a little longer right there.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how it works. Is you just kind of figure out what's going on, and the best part is that once you learn how to look at your physiology, and you can check your blood pressure, and you can look at your pH, you can do those things every day. It's easy. Then you get to see, are things moving the right direction even before the symptoms improve? Because a lot of people will explain to me steps that they've taken before after I help them look at their chemistry. And I'm like, oh man, that step totally would have fixed it if you would have continued. But since it didn't solve the problem in 4 days, like, a drug knocks out a symptom in 4 hours, they figured that that must not be the right step. So they bounced on to something else.
Gotcha. So the next question I kind of wanted to ask you is, what does an ideal diet look like? And I know it will vary from person to person, but we can start with, in your case, what does your ideal daily diet look like? Breakfast,
Yeah.
lunch, dinner?
Yeah. And it definitely does. It varies a lot, but there is some basic things that just seem to work better. And that is, I don't know if you've heard about this. A lot of people haven't, but it's eating real food. That's just a little trick
Yeah,
that I
I
picked
had a
up.
feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah,
I was kind of guessed at that point. Yep.
and people always like, well, what does that mean? And what real food means is that it grew out of the ground, or it grew off of a tree, or it came from an animal that was standing on the ground peeing on that tree. It's real food. Like squirt cheese is not real food. And that's a big step for a lot of people. And what I find is that a lot of people have tried that, and they're like, I felt horrible. I was bloated. I was nauseous. I was tired. I had a rock sitting in my stomach. And the reason that is because, like, protein, like a steak or something, that's a lot harder to break down than Cheez Its. You don't need a lot of digestive capacity to be able to break down a processed cracker, because the way that it's processed, it's already real ready to just turn into glucose, and that person can function on that glucose, even if it's just for a short amount of time. And yes, that all that glucose has a lot of problems that it's going to create long term. Most of us know that now. But when a person can't function eating real food, they're going to go with the Cheez Its. They got to go with what allows me to get up and go make $1. So, what we find is that when we help people fix their digestive problems, that they can get to the point where they qualify to eat real food and feel great doing it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, backing up, you talked about going out and making $1. Do you remember what the first dollar you made from helping other people with their own physiological problems was? Was it from consulting? Was it from a book that you launched, or?
I do. I do. I talk about this a lot in my book, "Kick Your Fat in the Nuts." Is that I remember exactly that I fixed my insomnia, just like we had talked about, and then I helped my friend fix his insomnia, and it happened to be different than what mine was, but we figured it out, and we helped him fix it. And if you're dealing with a torturous situation for years, when you fix it, you're excited and you talk about it. So my friend started telling people, and this other guy emailed me. He's like, "Hey, your buddy said you helped him fix insomnia, and so I'll pay you to help me fix mine." And I was like, "Oh, it's a business," and that's kind of how I got started. consulting people for nutrition.
And how did you go from there to actually writing books, podcasts? Can you talk a little bit about that journey?
Well, even though I started to improve some things, I still didn't get my voice back. It took me years to get my voice back. I went 8 years without having a voice. And in that process, I was going to a lot of workshops, and I was psycho. Like, I told all my friends, I'll call you when I fix this. I'm not being social, and I'm going to be a psycho freak, and I don't recommend that. It was not healthy in that respect, but I really wanted to get my voice back, because a comedian without a voice is just a mime, and not many people want to be a mime. So I just researched every second of the day that I had free, and I ended up learning so much that I ended up partnering with some guys who teach doctors and nutritionists from all over the world. And I partnered with them in setting up some systems to help practitioners kind of educate their clients a little bit easier. And that's kind of how things really started to kick off. And then I found partners to write books with me, and we started turning books into courses to help people understand them better. And then we turned that into a big online course that teaches people how to be an effective health coach or a health professional.
Wow. Oh, did you ever read the book? I forget Scott Adams. Are you familiar with Scott Adams at all?
It sounds familiar, but I can't think of
So
what
he
he.
was the creator of Dilbert, and it's funny because from the beginning, when you talked about losing your voice, Scott Adams actually lost his voice as
Right.
well.
Yeah, I do
And
remember that now.
yeah, and so I'm kind of curious if it's so with Scott Adams specifically, he could still sing, he could still do like a memorized speech. Were you able to? How were you able to communicate? Was it all just writing by hand, or how did you do that?
Yeah, I could get about 12 words a day. So, and like, I would keep track during the day, and this was for years. So some days I couldn't talk at all, but on the good days I got about 12 words that I was able to say before it was so bad that I couldn't talk anymore. So I did all of my communicating through email. So I was even working with clients. At the time when I lost my voice, I had some personal training clients because I moved to LA, and I didn't know that in LA they don't pay comics here.
Mm.
Everybody's just doing stuff for free so they can be seen. So I was like, all right, well, I've done some training stuff before. That's how I'll, increase some income when I'm not on the road. So I already had clients. And when I lost my voice, and I just kept training them without talking, they knew enough of what I was doing that I could just point and kind of show them what I wanted to do. It was kind of funny. And they would send friends, and I was like, really? You want a trainer that can't talk? And I don't know, maybe they just knew I wasn't going to yell at them. I don't know, but I kept getting referrals, and that's when I started working people with through nutrition too. And they understood that I would help them look at their physiology, but all of the education that I would give them was going to be through email, and then through this website that I created with these partners that kind of helps people learn a little bit faster.
Do you still do stand-up comedy, are
I,
you done with that?
I haven't. I haven't done it yet, just because I'm having so much fun with what I'm doing. And I think anyone out there who has had a long-standing health issue, who has improved it, that you kind of become passionate about health, and it's just more fun to help somebody fix a problem like that than anything else I've done. I may do some stuff again, but we got so much stuff going on. We're making a weight loss documentary. We got all these other books and stuff. I just haven't taken the time to be like, oh, I should go look stupid again.
Let's talk a little bit about the documentary. So, can you explain the basic premise of what's going on in the documentary?
It's called Why Am I So Fat? And it's a weight loss documentary. And I have a client named Gabe that worked with me, and he came to me, and he was over 400 pounds. And in a 12-month period, we helped him lose 235 pounds. And we didn't do any surgery or no drugs or anything like that. We started working with his body instead of against it, and it was incredible. And I've had other clients that have lost a lot of weight. Kenna McEnroe is in the film quite a bit. She was in that movie Office Space, and she's on our podcast a lot too. And we just started making this documentary just to show what we did. And then a bunch of big names kind of caught on to what we were doing, and they're like, "Hey, I'll be in that. I'll help you with that." And we ended up with people like Bill Phillips from Body for Life, and Dallas and Melissa Hartwig, and Rob Wolf, and people from Muscle and Fitness Magazine and Shape, and all these magazines got in there too. So it just kind of took off and it's turned into this huge thing. So now it's become a lot harder to finish.
Yeah, and when is that going to be released?
Towards the end of next year.
Okay. And are you releasing it as, how are you doing it? Is it like a Kickstarter type thing, or you're just fully funding it yourself?
We did some Kickstarters in the beginning, and we're in post production now. So we finished all the filming stuff, and now we're doing all the editing and everything like that. And then we have some offers for some different types of distribution, and we'll just go with whatever works best by the time we get there.
So I want to take this on a slightly different tangent here, but for your podcast, there's obviously a lot of health podcasts out there. What have you done to be able to get listeners to your podcast, or what do you guys do differently, not just with the show itself, but as far as how you market the show?
We have a really big Facebook following, and that seems to help us a lot. We post a lot of our show topics, and it's just like, we're putting up a show card that says, acid reflux. What's the deal with that? And just a little blurb, and then when they click onto that, it goes to our website where they can listen to the podcast episode and get answers for themselves, and they share it with their friends. So a lot of our success with that show comes from people just figuring out for themselves how to fix these issues that are plaguing them, and then telling their friends.
Well, I'll put links to all that in the show notes. I want to be respectful of your time and start wrapping up, but I have one last big question for you, and you can answer this however you want. It could be about health, it could be about stand-up comedy, but if you had some advice for either your, let's say, mid-20-something-year-old self, or if you just give some general advice to all the audience members, everybody listening here, what kind of advice would you give to us?
I think that if I could do a lot of things over, I would say never have a mullet again. That was a mistake, and I want to apologize to everyone now for that. But the biggest thing that I like to tell somebody who is kind of starting off and like, what do I do? I want to be successful, but how do I go about that? Here I go to college, or, what's the route? And somebody told me once that has always stuck with me is that find something that you love to do, and then find a way to make money doing that. And that's it. And that doesn't mean that, maybe you love to sing, but you're a horrible singer. So if you're never going to make money singing, that doesn't mean that you can't make a living writing about singing, or maybe just write songs. And, there's a lot of different ways to turn what you're passionate about into a way that you can make money in that field, so that you can focus on the things that you love every day. So it doesn't have to be, I'm not good at that, so I can't make a living doing that. People are making a living doing just about anything now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right. That's great advice. Tony, where can people find out more about you and everything you're doing?
Just go to kickitnaturally.com, and you'll find all of our stuff there, and links to anything you might want to see. And over on the right, you'll see previous show topics. So you can kind of click on that and kind of browse through to see if there's something that you're dealing with you'd like to better understand. You can just listen to that and get an idea. And then if you need to figure out how to look at your own physiology, just sign up for that almost free 4-week digestion course, and it'll walk you through how to do that.
I love it. And I'll put links to both those, both your site and the course in the show notes. Tony, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Hey, you bet. Thanks for having me, Travis.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you did, make sure you hit the big red subscribe button down below. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter. And I release a new video every Monday. And by hitting that subscribe button, you'll get those new videos every Monday. And this is really a podcast. It's also a website. You can check out the website. It's howtodoyour20s.com. I'll put a link right over here as well. And what it's all about is trying to improve your life. And we specifically focus on things that people in their 20s are interested in. So make sure you like the video if you liked it, subscribe, like us on Facebook and Twitter, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again on another video.